could sneak in a cheeky bonus book because I filmed that wrap-up video early so I could go on holiday. And the lucky book that was chosen as the bonus was a mystery book from an eBay haul that I also did a video about. Not to plug myself or anything, but you can check them out. And the mystery book that I chose from that haul was called The Broken Souls, which was the only crime book, spoiler alert, from the 5 books that were in the mystery haul, and also randomly the only one that was set in the US. To give you a little bit of background on the book, I'll read you a little bit of the blurb. Blood was everywhere, like the interior had been hosed down with an artery. The gore-sodden horror that greets homicide detective Carson Ryder on a late-night call-out is enough to make him want to quit the case. Too late. Now he and his partner Harry are up to their necks in a bizarre and disturbing murder inquiry. surprises, but I gave this book a 3 out of 10, and it will be going straight to a charity shop for the next sucker. Book 2. After the disaster that was that bonus book, I kicked off my June reading with a self-development book, which is called The Secret World of Sleep. I actually originally bought this book hoping that it might shed some light on my own sleeping habits or problems, but I quickly realised that it is not that kind of a book at all. Instead, it's all about all these different types of sleep conditions, like narcolepsy or sleep apnea, and it's written by Dr. Guy Leschziner, who is a neurologist, and he works with people who have a myriad of sleep conditions, and the book explains some of these and then also kind of delves into the science behind them, and then also the treatments that have either helped them or are kind of starting to help them. As much as this book was supposed to help me learn, I guess, a bit more about sleep, it also, on the way, unlocked a new fear for me. Not only because some of the sleep conditions in this book are genuinely terrifying, but also around medication and the drugs that get prescribed and how they don't ever really know if they're going to work, or the side effects down the line, or in some cases in the book they make the condition worse, or these new symptoms appear that they never had before they started this drug. And it's like, I know that obviously we've come a very, very long way in medicine, but it does make you really think, wow, we still have so far to go. Some of the conditions have never been treated before, so they're using pills that are meant for other diseases or other conditions, and so they don't really know what it's going to do to this person. And obviously, they consent to taking the drugs or whatever, but it just makes you think that, one, it depends on the general practitioner or the doctor that you see to refer you to the right people in the first place, but also for them to themselves to have a knowledge about the drugs they're prescribing and their kind of, I guess, the impact they can have. I don't think that was the intention of this book, but it really, I don't know, really made me pause and think a lot. The abject terror aside, it was actually really interesting to learn about the different sleep conditions. There were some that I'd heard of before, like narcolepsy and sleep apnea, like I mentioned previously, but it was really, really fascinating to learn about the science behind it and what happens in your brain and your body, and what causes it, what is happening during that episode, and then how you can kind of counteract it. And a lot of it is like your body is awake and asleep at the same time. But yeah, some of them are terrifying. Some of them are kind of funny, but also you do really feel for these poor people having to live like this. And some of them are just plain odd. The science does get a little too technical for me in parts, but it's enough that I can get the gist of what's going on, and then I can kind of, check out mentally, think about something else for a while I'm skimming, and then come back in when it gets back into the story or the anecdote part. So, but yeah, it was really fascinating. Overall, as much as this wasn't a typical self-development book, it was still incredibly insightful and very interesting to learn about. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. Book 3 was a book list book, and it is the history and biography category of the 2018 Goodreads Choice Awards, and that is The Good Neighbour by Maxwell King. In case you didn't know who this man some of it is unnecessary because it starts to get very repetitive, and the author tries to do it in chronological order, but then ends up jumping ahead and telling you bits to give you context or fill in gaps of knowledge. So then when you work your way through to that point in time, you get the story all over again in more detail. And then sometimes it gets referred back to further down the line as well. So you end up being told several times the same story, and it's like, yeah, we get it. And I definitely don't need pretty much a whole chapter on the fact that he loved swimming, and that he did it every day, and that he loved to swim in the nude even though it was a public pool. So I think I would have been fine not knowing that information myself. But what I did like about the book was learning about Fred's himself and his achievements, because he really is an insanely inspiring man. His TV shows, I think it spanned the late 60s to 2001. It was a hell of a career, and the fact that he just stuck to his guns so much and believed so strongly in changing the face of children's TV programming, the way he wouldn't advertise to kids, the way that he would speak to them on and off camera and engage with them, make them feel seen and heard, is so powerful. And he really was one of the first to do that, and for a long time was still like one of the only ones to really push that agenda. And I think any kid that grew up watching his TV show was very privileged to be able to have that kindness radiating through. And I don't know the state of kids' TV nowadays. I don't have children, so I don't sit and watch kids' TV. But I really hope that some producer or writer took note of what Fred Rogers was doing and is continuing that legacy of talking to children and really helping with their self-development from an emotional intelligence perspective. But that being said, as much as I enjoyed reading about his career and his life, I didn't need to hear it like 12 times. And so it made it such a slog to get through that I gave it a 5 out of 10. Sorry, Fred. Book 4 was a personal choice book, and of course I had to go with the 4th book in the Thursday Murder Club series, which is The Last Devil to Die. And so we're back with the elderly gang in Cooper's Chase, whose friend Koldesh has been murdered. So it's a bit closer to home this time, and they are investigating who killed him, and then they discover that he's got himself mixed up with a bad bunch of people, or he's got mixed up in like a difficult situation. And so kind of the usual investigation, a web of suspects emerges, and then it's their path to figuring it out. I was very worried coming into this book that it was going to make me cry, and I was right to be wary, because I wasn't even 100 pages in and I was sobbing my heart out. This book has such a sad undertone, and it's just it really is heartbreaking in places. It was still funny in places despite the undertone, but I do think this story is a little bit weaker than the others in the series. I don't think the story, like the crime itself, was as strong or as interesting. And with that, there's less twists and subplots, to the point that I actually managed to figure it out myself, and I was surprised that I managed to do that, because in the others if you have a goal, break it down into small, manageable chunks. And again, great, but then it doesn't go into the details to how you can do that. And so it felt like, at least to start with, that it was focused a lot more on trying to be funny and having that quirky, like, no bullshit approach rather than the actual content itself. And it is also pretty repetitive. I made a note that I was 25% through and it was still saying the same thing, that it all comes down to strategy, focus and commitment, and all the way through it just kind of comes back to that, which is okay, but like sometimes it would just say, like, go back and read that bit. Yeah. Okay. What I did get out of the book is that I am one of those people that feels like I do need constant reminders that I need to work on something, or you know, you get, it's a reminder but then also written or given to you in a different way, and then you're like, maybe that will help me a bit more. So an example in this book is she talks about time management and procrastination and prioritization, and she says to make a to-do list, and then with everything on your to-do list you then make a second list that is that same list but prioritized, and then once you have your prioritized list you make a third list which is a must-do list, and then you lift the things from there that have to be done that day, and from there you can start to see and structure your day in the hope that you will be more focused on getting just these few things done, because everything else can like wait, and then you know the next day other things move from your prioritized list onto your must-do list, and then you can tick off like that. And actually I did find that very useful, a useful way of structuring. I love a to-do list, but it can get pretty, or you know, you tick off the easy things, because you know, and then it looks like you've ticked loads off, but actually it was like, wake up, have coffee. I don't do that, but you get my drift. So I did find that useful. And there were other points around impulse control and willpower, and specifically around like working out or eating better, that I also found to be quite useful for, especially for my life personally. So there are some good tidbits in here that were useful, but there's also a lot. I did find it a little bit lacking, and I don't know if maybe it's because I think it would be really good for somebody just starting out in their self-development journey, doesn't really know where to start, because I think it is written for that market maybe. So I think that it would be very beneficial to them, but for me it didn't have quite enough in it, so I gave it straight down the middle, 5 out of 10. So the last book of the month is another serious goblin. So that took a little bit of adjusting for me, but I'm in it now and I do really like it. So we'll see how it goes. So I can't rate it yet because I don't think it would be fair, because I don't think I'm fully in it enough. If you had to, like, you know, if you twisted my arm, I'd probably say I don't think enough has happened in the plot yet for it to be any more than a 7, but it could easily change because I have a feeling something's coming, in which case it would go up. But I will review this in my July wrap-up video, along with if I manage to make it to the other 2 books before the month is over. They will also be included. So that's your lot, all the books I read and are still reading in June. For July, I am actually shaking it up a little bit, and I have a little bit of a special themed month coming up. So I was going to tell you what it is, but no spoilers here.